Welcome to the third module of this WHO online training course for mass gatherings in the context of COVID-19. In this module, we will be learning how to conduct a risk assessment for a sporting mass gathering. Today, we will walk you through some of the tools WHO has published that will aid organizers in their planning for upcoming mass gatherings. The tools we plan to cover today are some risk assessments that have been developed for generic mass gatherings, as well as sports-specific and religious-specific mass gatherings. These will be discussed in detail in the following modules. These risk assessments provide a user-friendly way for organizers to understand their level of risk an upcoming mass gathering may hold in further spreading COVID-19, both within a country and globally. All of the tools mentioned today can be found on the WHO website and at the link provided on this slide. At the end of this module, you will be able to list the steps involved in the sporting mass gathering risk assessment and determine an overall risk score using the WHO risk assessment tool we will be describing, that is the sporting risk assessment, taking into account modification and mitigation measures that can be implemented to reduce the risk. Let's break these parts of the tool down further. First, the risk assessment. Remember to use the accompanying WHO COVID-19 risk assessment addendum for sporting events Excel file to conduct this risk assessment. You can find the risk assessment on the second tab of the Excel document. There are 6 questions in this risk assessment and include 1. Will the event take place in a host country with documented active local transmission, or in other words, community spread? 2. Will the event be held in multiple venues, cities, or countries? 3. Will the event include international participants, that is, athletes and spectators, from countries that have documented active local transmission, or in other words, community spread? 4. Will the event include a significant number of participants, athletes and spectators, at higher risk of severe disease? These would be people over 65 years of age and people with underlying health conditions. 5. Will the event include sports that are considered at higher risk of spread for COVID-19, such as contact sports? And 6. Will the event be held indoors? You must answer yes or no for each of these questions to receive your risk score. In the Excel sheet provided, you must place a 1 in the corresponding box if your answer is yes, and 0 if your answer is no. Risk scores range from 0, which is considered negligible risk, to 6, which is defined as very high risk. The mitigation checklist is the second part of this tool. Mitigation measures are meant to reduce the risk that the mass gathering event will facilitate COVID-19 transmission. Together with the risk assessment score, the mitigation measures will contribute to the decision matrix and influence the assessment of the total risk of transmission and further spread of COVID-19 for the mass gathering. While the mitigation checklist includes all the measures found in the generic risk assessment tool, there are also some specific mitigation measures for sporting mass gatherings that have been included for consideration. As with the risk assessment, you must use the accompanying WHO COVID-19 risk assessment addendum for sporting events Excel file to conduct the mitigation checklist, which can be found on the third tab of this Excel document. Mitigation checklists cover a variety of topics including understanding the overview of the current COVID-19 situation by event organizers, event emergency preparedness and response plans, stakeholder and partner coordination, command and control, risk communication, public health awareness of COVID-19 before and during an event, surge capacity, and sporting-specific mitigation measures. You must complete the entire mitigation checklist and answer yes, completed, maybe in progress, or no, not considered for each question. In the Excel sheet provided, you must place a 2 in the corresponding box if your answer is yes, completed, a 1 if your answer is maybe in progress, and a 0 if your answer is no, not considered. Dependent on your answers to these questions and the weighting of importance they have been given by external group of experts, you will receive a total mitigation score as a percentage. The total mitigation score is divided into quartiles. That is, 0 to 25% is considered very unprepared to mitigate COVID-19 impacts. 26 to 50% is considered somewhat unprepared to mitigate COVID-19 impacts. 51 to 75% is considered somewhat prepared to mitigate COVID-19 impacts. And 76 to 100% is considered very prepared to mitigate COVID-19 impacts. The decision matrix can be found on the fourth tab of the Excel file and combines the risk score and the mitigation score to provide a color determination which identifies the total risk of transmission and further spread of COVID-19 for the mass gathering. Depending on your risk score and your mitigation score, you will receive an overall score for the mass gathering event of very low, low, moderate, high, or very high. A color determination key is also provided that describes the total risk for each color. Now, before we move on to the religious risk assessment tools, let's use this sporting risk assessment tool in an example mass gathering. A large university athletics championship is planned in a country with sporadic cases of COVID-19. The conference is expected to have participants from all over the country attend the championship. The qualifying rounds will be held in 10 different university track and field grounds, with the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals also held in different venues. All the athletes and most of the spectators will be university students with no reported underlying health conditions. Once you have opened the accompanying WHO COVID-19 Risk Assessment Addendum for Sporting Events Excel file, you are ready to conduct the first part of this process, the risk assessment. We can answer the questions as follows. Will the event take place in a host country with documented active local transmission or community spread? No. In this example, there are currently only sporadic cases being reported, so this country is not considered to have community spread, and we can give this question a score of 0 to indicate no. Question 2. Will the event be held in multiple venues, cities, or countries? Yes. As many universities will host qualifying trials, and different universities are selected to host the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the final, there will be multiple different venues used. We can give this question a score of 1 to indicate yes. Question 3. Will the event include international participants, that's athletes and spectators, from countries with documented active local transmission, or in other words, community spread? No. As this is a national championship, there is no planned international participation, so we can give this question a score of 0 to indicate no. Question 4. Will the event include a significant number of participants at higher risk of severe disease? Remember, these would be people over 65 years of age or people with underlying health conditions. No. All athletes and most spectators are expected to be university students with no reported underlying health conditions. We can give this question a score of 0 to indicate no. Question 5. Will the event include sports that are considered at higher risk of spread for COVID-19, such as contact sports? No. The event will not include contact sports, so we can give this question a score of 0 to indicate no. And question 6. Will the event be held indoors? No. The event is planned to be held in outside track and field venues at each university. Therefore, we can give this question a score of 0 to indicate no. This gives us a total risk score of 1, which is very low risk. Now that we have found a risk score of 1, we can proceed to the second part of this process, conducting the mitigation checklist. As we mentioned before, the mitigation checklist is found on the third tab of the WHO COVID-19 Risk Assessment Addendum for Sporting Events Excel file. As there are quite a few of these questions, we will not go through and answer every single one for the purpose of this exercise. Instead, we will just look at one of the topics the mitigation checklist covers, the sports-specific mitigation measures. There are 7 questions in this topic that we need to consider, and we will answer them as we go through them. Question 1. Will there be daily health checks for athletes or competitors? No. There are no planned daily health checks, so we would score this as 0 for no, not considered. Question 2. Will the athletes be separated from other groups, such as officials, support staff, and spectators, to limit transmission? No. The athletes are not planned on being separated from any other groups, so we would score this as 0 for no, not considered. Question 3. Are there measures in place to limit the sharing of equipment, water bottles, and towels? Yes. All athletes must have their own water bottles, towels, and any equipment necessary for the event, so we would score this as 2 for yes, completed. Question 4. Will athletes be given closed containers to allow for the safe disposal or storing of all hygienic materials? Yes. All athletes will be given a closed container for the safe disposal of any hygienic materials they may have, so we would score this as 2 for yes, completed. Question 5. Will the sporting event have designated seating for all spectators? Yes. Designated seating in the stadium will be provided for any spectators that want to attend, so we would score this as 2 for yes, completed. Question 6. Does the designated seating provided allow for physical distancing between spectators, with a minimum of 1 meter between each? No. The designated seating does not allow for physical distancing between any spectators, so we would score this as 0 for no, not considered. And question 7. Have pre-travel health checks been performed on all athletes to ensure underlying comorbidities, medications, allergies, and so on are documented? Health checks of all athletes are in progress. However, it is uncertain if they will be completed in time, so we will score this as 1 for maybe in progress. After completing the entire mitigation checklist for this exercise, we receive a score of 43%. Going back to our decision tree, we find the risk score of 1 for very low risk and the modification range that includes 43%. So that would be 26 to 50%, and we can see that our overall risk is low. Now that we have completed the risk assessment process, we can use this information to further refine our planning for the upcoming sporting mass gathering. Now that we have reviewed and conducted a sporting mass gathering risk assessment, we are ready to move to the final module. In Module 4, you will be learning about and using the Religious Mass Gathering Risk Assessment tool.